The beer was sweating as much as I was. It was the kind of heat in Makati that felt like a physical weight, a thick, wet blanket you couldn't shrug off. The noise of the bar was a beast of its own, a chaotic symphony of clinking glasses, bad 80s rock, and the high-pitched laughter of girls who were paid to find everything funny. Across from me, Frank was holding court with an audience of one, his face flushed with San Miguel and self-satisfaction. "It's about respect, you know," he said, leaning forward, his voice a low, conspiratorial boom. "Here they respect their elders. They appreciate a man who's established." I nodded, taking a slow sip. Established. That was Frank's word for it. 62, with a bad knee, a pension that hit his account on the first of every month like a Swiss train, and a profound loneliness he tried to fill with the warmth of the Philippine sun. He was in the middle of a story about his landlord, but his eyes kept darting to the phone lying face up on the sticky table between us. It was his anchor, his oracle, his direct line to a reality he'd paid a premium to construct. He'd polished its screen with the hem of his polo shirt so many times it gleamed under the dim bar lights, a tiny black mirror reflecting his anxious hope. And then it happened. The screen lit up. The transformation was instantaneous. The rambling story about the landlord died in his throat. The vague irritation in his face melted away, replaced by the giddy, unfocused smile of a teenager. It was 12:08 a.m. Right on schedule. "Ah, here we go," he breathed, fumbling for the reading glasses hanging from his neck. He perched them on his nose, a small, endearing gesture that only highlighted the 2 decades separating him from the face on his phone's wallpaper. He squinted, his thumb hovering over the notification. For a moment, the entire bar, the entire noisy, sweating city seemed to fade away for him. There was only the light from that small rectangle. He finally tapped the screen, and his smile broadened into a full-blown, incandescent beam. It was a look of pure, unadulterated validation. A man who felt seen, loved. "Look at this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't just pass the phone to me, he shoved it across the table like it was the winning lottery ticket. "Right when she gets off work. What did I tell you? She never forgets." I picked up the phone. The sender was listed as My Heart 3. The message wasn't words. It was a string of emojis, a dozen red hearts, a kissing face, a blushing smiley, and a single, final hibiscus flower. Beneath it, the last message he had sent an hour ago. "Sent 5,000 pesos for your mom's medicine, baby. Get some rest." I looked at the screen, at the cascade of digital affection. I saw a master class in timing. I saw a girl who knew her customer, who understood that the most valuable service she provided wasn't physical. It was the meticulous, perfectly timed delivery of the illusion he craved. Frank saw proof of a love that transcended oceans and age gaps. I saw a receipt. "She's thinking of me," he said, his voice soft with wonder, as if witnessing a miracle. He took the phone back reverently, his thumb tracing the emojis on the screen. "She's really something special, isn't she?" I stared into my beer, at the condensation tracing a wet ring on the table. "Yeah, Frank," I said, the noise of the bar rushing back in. "She's really something." The next week, the beer tasted different. We were at the same bar, sitting at the same sticky table, but the buoyant certainty in Frank's voice had been replaced by a thin, brittle defensiveness. The initial glow of validation had faded into a low-grade anxiety that made him tap his fingers on the table and check his phone even more compulsively than before. It had started with a tooth. Angel's cousin, apparently, needed an emergency root canal. It was 7,000 pesos. Frank had sent it without a second thought. But 2 days later, her phone was supposedly broken. A new one was 10,000 pesos. He'd sent that too. It's just bad luck, he insisted, more to himself than to me. Things break. People get sick. It's not like it is back home. Life is harder here. He stared into his San Miguel, swirling the amber liquid as if it held the answers. She feels terrible about having to ask. It's humiliating for her. I didn't point out that her humiliation was always followed by a bank transfer notification. The real crack appeared on a Thursday. We were eating lechon at a street-side stall, the smell of roasted pork thick in the air. Frank was quieter than usual. He tried to call Angel that morning, a rare daytime video call he'd been looking forward to, but she hadn't picked up. Instead, she'd sent a flurry of texts an hour later. "Sorry, baby, was at church praying for you." He'd shown me the text, his face a confused mixture of pride and unease. "She's so devout," he'd mumbled. But then he'd scrolled up, his thumb hesitating over a photo she'd sent the night before. It was a selfie, a playful kiss blown at the camera. In the background, reflected faintly in a dark window behind her, was the unmistakable, pulsating neon of a nightclub sign. He had said nothing, just quickly locked his phone and put it away. Now, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the food stall, his phone buzzed. It was her. A video call. Frank's face lit up with relief, the doubt momentarily erased. "See? Told you," he said, a little too loudly, as he fumbled to answer. "Hi, baby," he boomed, his smile wide and desperate. "Hi, honey." Her voice came through, a little tinny. The connection was poor, her face a mosaic of pixels. She was in a brightly lit room, not the dim apartment he was used to seeing. Other voices chattered in the background. "I miss you so much," Frank said, his eyes glued to the screen. "I miss you too, honey," she replied. There was a pause. Someone off camera laughed, a loud, sharp sound. Angel's eyes darted away, her smile tightening. "Honey, I can't talk long. My auntie is here." "Oh, okay, baby. I just wanted to see your face." "I know, honey. Did you get my message about the rent?" The question was smooth, almost rehearsed, dropped into the conversation with the practiced ease of a surgeon making an incision. Frank's smile faltered. "The rent? I thought we handled that last week." "No, that was for my mama's house," she said quickly, a flicker of impatience crossing her pixelated face. "This is for my apartment. The landlord is being very mean." "Right, of course," Frank said, his voice smaller. The man who had been holding court a week ago was now just a man being managed. I'll see what I can do." "Okay, honey. I love you so much. I have to go now. Mwah!" The screen went black before he could even say it back. Frank lowered the phone slowly, placing it face down on the table. The silence between us was heavier than the humid air. He didn't look at me. He just stared at the back of his phone, at the small, dark rectangle that had once been a source of uncomplicated joy. He picked at a loose thread on his shirt, his brow furrowed in concentration. The illusion wasn't shattered, not yet, but for the first time, it was starting to feel thin. He was no longer just seeing the girl. He was beginning to see the game. It took 2 weeks for the final piece of the illusion to fall away. It wasn't a dramatic shattering, but a quiet, administrative click. The request had become a dull, predictable rhythm, a background noise to Frank's life. Angel's grandmother was sick. The roof of her family home had a leak. Her younger brother needed a laptop for school. The emergencies were constant, but the expressions of love were too. They arrived every night, just after midnight, a volley of hearts and flowers sent from a phone he had paid for. Frank continued to pay, but the joy was gone. He was no longer buying into a romance. He was servicing a debt. The end came with a typhoon. Not a real one, but a financial one. Angel called him, her voice a torrent of manufactured panic. Her family's fishing boat, their entire livelihood, had been smashed in a storm. They needed 50,000 pesos to repair it, immediately. "It's everything, honey," she'd sobbed over the phone. "Without it, my papa has nothing." Frank was tired. The numbers no longer felt like aid, they felt like ransom. But he was in too deep. The habit was too strong. "Okay, baby," he heard himself say. "I'll send it, don't worry." He transferred the money. The confirmation screen glowed. He felt nothing. No satisfaction, no resentment, just a hollow echo. He closed the banking app and, on a whim he didn't fully understand, opened a news app. He typed Typhoon Visayas into the search bar. The results loaded instantly. Sunny skies, calm seas. The Regional Weather Bureau reported nothing more than light coastal showers for the past 2 weeks. He stared at the screen. The lie was so lazy, so insultingly simple. She hadn't even bothered with a plausible fiction. There was no respect in it. It was the work of an employee who knew her boss was too spineless to fire her. The phone in his hand felt heavy, alien. He looked at her picture on the wallpaper, the smiling girl blowing a kiss. He saw her now, not as a lover, not as a victim of circumstance. He saw her as a professional. He saw a woman who clocked in, managed her accounts, and provided a consistent, if intangible, service. The nightly texts weren't whispers from the heart. They were status reports. The emojis weren't affection. They were invoices. The "I love you" was the most potent tool in her kit, a key that opened the vault. That night, for the first time in a year, Frank turned his phone off before midnight. He sat in the dark of his rented condo, the silence roaring in his ears. There was no buzzing notification, no cascade of digital hearts. There was only the hum of the air conditioner and the distant traffic on the avenue below. When he turned it on the next morning, it was a graveyard of missed calls and frantic messages. "Baby, where are you? I love you so much. Why aren't you answering? Honey, please, I need to talk to you. Did you get my message about the boat?" The words were just words. He saw them for the code they were. "I love you" meant, "The transaction is not complete." "I need you" meant, "Payment is overdue." "Where are you" meant, "The asset has gone offline." He looked at the string of messages, the desperate attempts to re-establish the connection. He felt a strange, detached pity. Not for himself, but for her. A seller chasing a customer who had simply walked out of the store. He scrolled to her contact, My Heart 3. His thumb hovered over the block button. He didn't press it. Blocking felt like anger, like passion. This was not about emotion anymore. This was about business. He simply put the phone down, face up, on his bedside table and walked away. The messages could keep coming. The meter was no longer running. A month later, Frank found himself walking past the same bar. He didn't plan it. It was like his feet had their own memory, a muscle conditioned by routine. He hesitated for a moment on the pavement. Then, with a quiet sigh that was neither sad nor happy, he walked in. The same sticky heat, the same terrible music, the same manufactured joy. He ordered a San Miguel and found a small table in the corner, a spectator's seat. He didn't have to wait long. She walked in just after 10, a predator entering her hunting ground. Her eyes swept the room with an efficiency Frank could now recognize as professional appraisal. They landed on a man at the bar. He was a new model, but the same make. 60-ish, sunburnt, a wedding ring indentation on his finger, and a loneliness so vast it was practically a landmark. Frank watched, a ghost at the feast. He saw the play unfold, not as a tragedy, but as a well-rehearsed script. He saw the way she slid onto the stool, the light touch on the man's arm, the man's slow, astonished smile. He had rented that smile. He knew its exact cost. He watched her laugh at a joke that wasn't funny, her head tilted just so. He watched the man pull out his phone and show her pictures, his boat, his dog, his grandkids. He was presenting his credentials, auditioning for the part Frank had just vacated. At one point, Angel excused herself, phone in hand, and walked toward the restrooms. Her path took her directly past Frank's table. Her eyes, scanning the room for the next opportunity, flickered and met his. For a single frozen second, the world stopped. There was no shock, no fear, no guilt. There was only the brief, blank recognition a cashier gives a customer from a previous shift. Her lips tightened into a thin, unsmiling line, a barely perceptible nod that carried the cold finality of a closed ledger. Then she was past him, her hips swaying, her focus already on the next transaction. Frank took a slow drink of his beer. He felt nothing. Not anger, not jealousy, not even the ghost of heartbreak. He felt the serene, hollow clarity of a man who has finally finished a very long, very tedious audit. He had audited his own desires and found them wanting. The girl wasn't the disease. She was just a symptom of his own desperate need to feel seen. She hadn't sold him a lie. She had sold him a mirror. He left the half-finished beer on the table and walked out into the breathing night. The city noise was a familiar roar. He had spent a fortune to have his loneliness repackaged and sold back to him. He finally understood he had never been the customer. He was the product.